I was consulting with my sidekick who can't remember a damn thing. But my friend on the right mentioned this young girl named Payne. Medora Payne. Thank you. Finally. And Medora came in and she wanted to put a poster up in the window for Save the Whales. And all of us looked at her and smiled and said, sure. Then we immediately invited her into the back room where she spent the next 6 months stuffing envelopes with literature, etc. A couple of comments. Then I'll leave you with the tearjerker. But I first met Harvey when I was writing bad literature on Pneumonia Heights, and I'd come down to the Castle, and there would be the camera shop and this damn dog out front who liked people's legs far more than he liked any of the trees around. But Harvey came out one time and we started talking, and he said, I said, what do you do? And he said, I ran for supervisor and I got 15,000 votes, and I just gaped at him. I came from Chicago and the most we did was a kiss-in at City Hall, 100, that was it. So he asked me what I did. I told him I wrote, I was a writer. And he said, how would you like to write for me? And I said, what do you pay? And he said, no, Frank, you got it wrong. You pay us. So I've gotten the mistaken impression that a lot of people think that I was Harvey's speechwriter. That's not right. I was a pencil in Harvey's hand, and I wrote purely because Harvey couldn't write speeches and campaign at the same time. And the best example of that was when he was debating John Briggs up and down the coast, and Briggs came out with, geez, homosexual teachers will teach homosexuality to the students. And Harvey's line was, how do you teach homosexuality? Like you teach French? And the last thing I would like to mention about Harvey, well, two things. I'll save the kicker for the end. But they were going to make a movie about Harvey, and I went down to look at the goings-on, and Gus and Lance and Sean Penn found out that Harvey's speechwriter was still alive. So Penn came over. I must confess they were all surprised that I was still alive. But Penn came over and interviewed me on how did Harvey talk, etc., etc., etc. And after it was said and done, I took them all out to dinner. And Penn had to leave early, so he entertained Gus and Lance with gay stories about Chicago. And finally, Gus says, how would you like to be in the movie? I said, oh, you know, I can't act. And he said, oh, I don't think you have to. You're only going to have one word. And I said, what word is that? And he said, dog shit. So I expect when you go to the movies and you hear it, I expect to hear a round of applause. I have a very serious ending here, which will make me sorry that they invited me. When you're very young and you're growing up gay, you haunt the libraries looking for somebody to be a hero for you. Then you find out that Caesar was a switch hitter, so that didn't qualify. But, you know, you go through Tchaikovsky and various of the artists and whatnot. And it took me a long time before I found one. And when they had the march on Market Street after Harvey had died, and I was in the front line bawling because I suddenly realized that after all these years I'd found my hero and had never known it.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan Nicoletta, and for those of you who don't know, I had the good fortune of being a 19-year-old that was hired to work in Harvey's camera store.
Cute too.
And yeah, sort of, a little pimply face, but you know, scraggly hair. But anyway, that was my life transformed in that moment that they asked me to come work for them. It was the second supervisorial race, and so it's been a journey ever since, and Frank's been there alongside me. We were both kind of camera store groupies, and we remained very close friends. You know, I think the three of us were in concert when we said that we have to get Frank to write this intro, and so he rose to the occasion. He kind of was reticent. And he had visited some of these themes in text before, but he confessed after he was finished and submitted it. He said, "Please don't ask me to do this again." It was so emotionally difficult for him, and when you read it, you'll see why. It's a real sort of tour de force and a tribute to his friend Harvey. So I just want to thank you for doing it, Frank. And I also feel compelled to once again acknowledge Scott Smith, Harvey's life partner, who, you know, sort of after Harvey was killed, immediately set forth to organize the papers and the photographic material, and brought a handful of us along for the ride. And he passed away in the mid-90s of AIDS, and I miss him dearly because as much as Harvey, he was my mentor and dear friend and family member. And he mistakenly left us without a written will, so his papers went to his mom, who I had become friends with through various Thanksgiving dinners at Scott's house. And fortunately, she was very pro-gay, and she loved her son dearly, and she saw fit to honor his legacy by donating his papers lock, stock, and barrel to the Hormel Center. So thus is the genesis of this marvelous book that we now have. And I think Scott would be just terribly pleased about the whole thing. And I just want to add one little other sort of story, because I think that's really what we're here about, is the tradition of storytelling and that sort of verbal lineage, you know, and books certainly help the cause, but I think if we take it upon ourselves, that is the plea that Chuck is talking about, to pass on our own personal stories, and whether they're Harvey Milk related or not. The one that I'm going to tell right now is in response to Tom Temprano's inquiry about whether or not Harvey Milk would have thought that disco dancing was appropriate. And one of my favorite memories, which is an interesting moment in his personal history, because I think after that second supervisorial campaign completed itself and he lost, shortly thereafter Harvey kind of didn't have a life. You know, he really went in full strong, and kind of had to because of the forces that were against us in society. But in that year when I first met them in 1974, we were at some kind of benefit. I think it was at the Mine Chef bar. on Market Street, and it was probably an anti-Anita thing, if I remember correctly. But this is the year before I started working for them, and I was just simply a friend who hung out at the camera store and dropped off my film. But I remember grabbing both Scott and Harvey by the hand and pulling them out on the dance floor, and there the three of us were shaking our little booties like no tomorrow. So remember Harvey that way, and he did like disco dancing too. So should we do Q&A now? Okay. So please ask us. Come on, this crowd ain't shy. I know that.
I'm a seminarian student over at the Graduate Theological University, and I understand that Harvey, you mentioned a little bit about his connection with the unions, but I don't recall reading anything about faith communities. Did Harvey have any organization? Did he organize with any faith organizations or any church groups? I know 77 was a very different era, but still, was there a kernel of GLP affirming congregations?
Shall I? Yeah. I do know that he had started to express interest in the openly queer Jewish congregation that had just recently formed when Harvey had become supervisor, and that there was some overlap there. He was kind of a secular humanist or an avowed atheist, but somewhere in between there. So probably not much.
I guess that would be our sense of it too, at least in terms of the documents that that we worked with. We didn't see much evidence of that, so that would be
Yeah. Add a comment? I was involved with another book, and in my research for that book, I found